having decided to kill himself because he can refute all the reasons not to, and further resolving, because he's a sociable sort, to take a boatload of his townsfolk with him, he goes under the stage of the showboat in mid-performance, turns on the unlighted acetylene footlights, and waits immobile for the entire floating opera to blow. Fortunately, he's interrupted by a crewman who demands to know what he's up to. "What do you think you're doing?" Very reluctantly, I opened my eyes. The intruder, a young man dressed in overalls, apparently a crew member, had left me and was shutting off the gas valves, cursing and fumbling. His back was toward me. He quickly shoved open the window to air out the galley, and then, turning and seeing me awake, began to abuse me loudly, standing with his hands on his hips. "What do you want to do? Blow us up? What are you doing down here anyway? I swear everything at once." Well, I was supposed to say something, make some apology or explanation, but the fellow ran out into the dining room of the showboat, and anyhow, a strange thing had happened, a very strange thing. I was unable to open my mouth at all. This, I think, has to do with what I was speaking of a moment ago. It was futile to say anything, I mean ultimately futile, even though the situation demanded explanation, and ordinarily I could have talked my way out of it easily enough. I can, as I've said before, in connection with Betty June's puckered smile, almost always explain things in 3 or 4 different ways. But why explain at all? Why move at all? I could be handled roughly, perhaps arrested. So what? Embarrassed? So what? There was no reason to open my mouth. There was no reason to do anything. And I will say that the realization of this worked upon me involuntarily. This is important. It was not that I decided not to speak, but that, aware in every part of me of the unjustifiable nature of action, and completely subject as I was then to the operation of my reasoning, I simply could not open my mouth. My arms and legs would not move. An amazing helplessness. It reminds me of those holy men who, lost in a mystical concentration, become similarly immobile for long periods of time, oblivious to weather, the stares of the curious, and whatnot. But of course there is a positiveness about them. They've swapped one world for another, whereas I was simply paralyzed. Now, I don't think those are particularly well-written passages, but I read them to you. They're awfully earnest passages. But I read them to you to illustrate something that I want to try to follow through these readings tonight.